I'm going to say something today that goes against a lot of what you've been hearing me say. If you've been following our stuff for the last couple of years, you know that everything I do is geared towards or tends to be marketed towards the senior scholar. So I want to talk today about something a little bit different, which is can junior scholars write trade books? Is it too early? My name is John Gazvinian. If you don't know us, we are Scholars to Storytellers, where we help academics. I used to say senior academics, but I'm changing, I think, for reasons that we're going to find out about today. Academics in the humanities and social sciences make the transition to writing for the general public, engaging wider audiences, specifically how to write a trade book, how to get an agent and a big commercial book deal. I am with the great Clive Priddle, who many of you already know. He's a fantastic part of our team. Clive has been for decades one of the great voices in serious nonfiction publishing. For more than 20 years, he was publisher and editorial director at Public Affairs Books, which you probably already know is one of the is one of the great marquee names of serious nonfiction publishing in New York. Welcome back, Clive.
Hello, John.
So today we're going to talk about a pet topic of yours that you've been bugging me about for several weeks and months, and I think you're right about, which is what about junior scholars? So just a little bit of background for those of you who don't know as much about what we do, or even if you have been following closely what we do, you know that there is a certain line that I've been using for at least 2 to 3 years now, which is, hey, you're a senior scholar, you've written all the monographs, you're an endowed chair, you're a full professor, you've done all the things, you're as tenured as you're going to be. Now you're ready to write a trade book. And how do you do that? How do you find an agent? How do you unlearn some of the habits of thought and writing that have been kind of ingrained in you in the last 20, 30 years of your academic career? And that's really always been the bread and butter of who we help at Scholars to Storytellers in our coaching programs. Um, but I've started to notice something over the past year or two that I've been doing workshops, campus workshops and retreats, which is that every time I do one of these workshops, it's a room full of senior scholars, but there are always like at least two or three junior people, untenured, either tenure track junior or visiting assistant professors, postdocs, grad students, even one or two undergraduates, occasionally, very rare, but independent scholars, things like that. And somebody inevitably always asks, well, what about us? And I never quite know what to say because I think there are two basic blocks that have sort of been standing in the way for me up till now when it comes to kind of tailoring what we do towards trying to help junior scholars write trade books. One of them, quite frankly, is they don't always have the funds, and that's a real thing. We do run a business here, but I'm going to come back to that in a minute because that's a kind of boring reason, a prosaic reason. The other has to do with the way academia is structured, which is more challenging, right? If this is the classic advice in academia, if you are serious about having a tenure track position, you have to do certain things. You have to jump through certain hoops, and there is an understanding, spoken or unspoken, that for a tenure track humanities, social science academic, when you get that tenure track job, your first book is the monograph, and usually is based heavily on your dissertation. Sometimes it's literally just a sort of freshened up version of your dissertation with a few extra bells and whistles that goes out to academic presses and is published as a sort of 150, 200 page monograph, and sells 400 copies to libraries. And then that helps you get tenure, along with maybe some articles and teaching and other things as well. And then your second book is sometimes that can be a trade book, but in many cases it's either another monograph or it's maybe a crossover kind of trade-ish, academic trade kind of title with Yale or Princeton or Chicago or Oxford or one of the, if you're lucky, one of those types of publishers. And then when you're a full professor or you're ready to do your third book, that's when you should be thinking seriously about trade. And I think that's still very true. That senior scholars bring a kind of very well suited at the right moment to be doing this kind of book. You're seasoned. It's kind of your time now. You're kind of looking back as a kind of elder statesperson in your field, all those kinds of things, with a big picture analysis rather than a really drilled down monograph. But one of the things that Clive's helped me understand recently is that publishing doesn't think the same way as academia. So I'm coming at this, like most of you, as a trained academic who has made the transition successfully into trade publishing. But Clive is coming at this as a publisher, someone who's seen hundreds of proposals come across his desk over the past several decades. And one of the things he's helped me understand is that actually, from the publisher's perspective, junior scholars actually bring a lot of real advantages to the table that senior scholars don't. Right? The long-winded setup question. So,
Yeah.
okay, great. Well, thanks for coming, everyone. It's been a great conversation. So tell us why you think junior scholars should perhaps be thinking about trade. Why is it never too early?
Well, I think so. There's many things. First is something you said, which is that scholars, like anybody else, can get in the habit of a certain kind of writing, a certain kind of approach to things, and the more they do it, the more that habit becomes ingrained. And so, to some extent, the senior scholar will find it harder to adjust after four scholarly books to thinking about a trade audience because there are so many things that are different. Um, so if you can begin to think about some of those different approaches before you've become absolutely committed to the scholarly track, that adjustment is going to be much easier for you. So start young. Why not? The other thing is, I think, to do with why publishing looks at academics, young academics differently, perhaps, is this, publishing, or at least part of publishing, is a game of discovery. And everybody wants to find the new thing, the new shiny bauble. Publishing editors are magpies. They're looking for that shiny object. And it's hard to be a brand new shiny object if you are a scholar with 7 books behind you, because not only have you, given ample proof of your expertise and your work, but you've got 7 books that have sold in a certain kind of style, certain kind of level. So perhaps every book has sold 2,000 copies, which, if you're a scholar, that's a very solid, consistent sale. And many an academic press would be thoroughly delighted to have you coming back again and again and selling reliably. It gets harder and harder for any trade press to imagine that you're ever going to do anything other than sell 2,000 copies. And of course, one of the things they are dreaming about is of selling many more copies than that. We all know that those dreams don't always come true, but the dream is important. So, if this doesn't sound too twisted and old manish, it's easier to dream big about young people than it is about old people. There's more potential, there's more runway in front of them. And that's why I think actually there's nothing to prevent a young scholar from pitching themselves at a trade press if they think they've got the idea and they have the time and the bandwidth. And yes, they're prepared to take whatever risk that entails with their tenure track process.
So in a way, it's kind of the opposite of academia. Academia really tends to reward and value seniority. It's a very hierarchical, traditional sort of, progression kind of industry. You get to the point, you have to earn your stripes, you have to earn your respect. You have to do a whole bunch of things that take decades. And then you sort of look down like from Mount Olympus on your young colleagues and you mentor them and so on. Publishing, from what you're saying, works the other way around. It's a little bit ageist in the opposite direction. If you want, I don't want to use those terms because maybe that's too negative, but
Yeah, that
it
is too
values
negative. Yeah.
youth and excitement and the hot new
Well,
commodity and so
so
on.
I think publishing values commercial seniority.
Right.
And of course, there are some authors who have been very successful for a very long time and are recognized as such. So age has nothing to do with it.
Right.
But as we all know, it is harder and harder to, especially in the nonfiction area, to transfer commercial success from one book to the next one. So
Yeah.
that, the corollary of that is that a young person with the right idea at the right time, expressed in the right way, may be as likely to be successful as a much more experienced author. And so, in many ways, young scholars are more attractive. You don't necessarily have to pay on the basis that they've had, many years of success behind them, and therefore their going rate is much more valuable.
Right.
They, frankly, also, and I know we're generalizing here, so apologies to everybody who is exceptional to this, but younger scholars have tended to be better at dealing with the changing marketing, styles. They've been better at moving to online activities. They've been better at building profiles. They've been more willing to do it. They've gained more joy from it. And those things are now part of the necessary armory of, trade publishing. So, yeah, I think there's a lot to be said for people who don't feel as confined or obligated to traditional scholarships or a traditional academic institution. In other words, they can be within one, but they're prepared to have a life and a profile and a writerly existence that is one step outside of it as well.
Yeah. So a couple of interesting things there that I want to pick up on. One, the social media stuff, and then the other, we want to talk about precarity as well and all of those kinds of things. But I just want to make very clear for people listening, um, what you started out by saying, which is, um, one thing that I think academics sometimes forget is that in the publishing industry, what you're looking for, if you're an agent, if you're a publisher, is not just one book. You're looking for a career trajectory, right? You're trying to invest early in somebody's career. When sign up somebody who's an endowed chair in their 60s who's about to become emeritus, you're getting maybe one or at most two books out of this person. If they're very prolific, maybe three tops. But if you catch somebody who's in their late 20s, early 30s, who's hungry and has some great ideas, potentially you're investing in a decades-long career. And again, remember, agents work on commission. They make money when they sell your books. Publishers also, in a way, sort of work on commission. They make money when they sell your books, and you make money when they sell your books. Um, so I just want to make sure we're very kind of clear on that. I mean, that's basically at the core of this, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about social media. So yeah, and it is true. I mean, there's a generalization. I mean, there are some older people who are not. I'm occasionally okay on social media, despite being an old guy, and there are some young people who really don't like to do it. But is that? I mean, we know academics in general across the board aren't usually terribly keen on social media and things like that. But is the idea that when they see youth and sort of sort of young blood that publishers say, oh, this is someone we can send out on the book talk circuit, to do media interviews. They're going to help to push the book on their own social media, things like they're going to be
I
more versatile and open to things.
I don't think it's that exactly, because there are some really excellent people across all age groups on social media, who've got really, really good at it. If you look at somebody like Adam Tooze, I think his Substack is brilliant, brilliantly curated. He's a serious academic. He's out every day on social media. He's probably got a team of people now writing for him. It's a whole enterprise, and it has built a profile for him in his area in which he sells his books that is entirely complementary. It's a serious job of work, and he's done it really expertly. So there's no question that serious academics can do this. I think the difference maybe if one's going to, again, I apologize for generalizing here. Look at Heather Cox Richardson. She's a pretty senior academic, and she has got this incredibly successful Substack. And one of the things that she's been able to do, and that she does very willingly in that Substack space, is she speaks very personally, and she takes off any semblance of neutrality. And again, I think those are two aspects of trade appeal that many academics have to learn if they've been academics for a long time, and that perhaps younger people have a much more instinctive feel for. The identity of the individual is much more important to Gen Z than it ever was in previous generations. And it matters in terms of currency on social media. You need to be heard for who you are. So insofar as there are generational differences, I think that skews slightly younger. I think they're better at it than us. I think they're more willing to do it than we are, and I think they're more fearless. And that's the other thing I would say about the more senior academics is perhaps, speed of reaction. If something is happening, in the news cycle, are they out there and involved in that conversation and prodding it and making themselves visible, or are they waiting to give a deliberate and considered judgment after due reflection and a glass of sherry? I think there's a slight sense in which the younger people are more fearless, that a younger academic's got less to lose and can afford to be out there and mixing with whatever that event that's excuse me. So whatever the happenstance is that's exciting people, they can afford to join in. So I think that's why, if you've got less to lose and you're working in one of those areas where your topic is something that every so often resonates within the news cycle, being willing to jump on it, being willing to be part of the broadest conversation is an asset.
And let's just to be clear, we're not saying that this is that somehow if you're a senior academic you should give up, that it's too late. You know, that
Not a
you
bit.
yeah, right. Okay. Well, I
No,
don't want
but I just think we're talking about habits, and we started talking about habits. I think the older the academic, the less instinctive some of this stuff is. Not that they can't do it, and not that they can't do it well. And clearly, some people have said about it incredibly strategically. They have learned that they do it. They do it within the confines they set for themselves, and it works. But they really do it.
right.
Whereas I think there's a whole generation that's much younger than me that kind of grew up doing this stuff. Their every waking moment was, to some extent, a conversation about who they were in the social media space. And that's not necessarily a bad thing for promoting books.
Yes. And of course, senior scholars have a lot of advantages that they bring to the table that junior scholars as well simply don't, right? But this is a conversation we're trying to focus on the juniors. So let's talk about a different angle of this, though, which has to do with academic precarity. I think this is the other. I think this is the other advantage that a junior scholar brings, which is that there is an inbuilt assumption and understanding from fairly early on in your career that you simply may not have a job lined up at the end of your PhD, at the end of your postdoc, at the end of your VAP position, even if you're a let's say tenure track assistant professor. There's no guarantee that that's all going to work out either. So I think to some extent, one of the reasons we keep seeing junior people at our workshops and retreats is that they're kind of hedging their bets. They're keeping their options open in a way that used to be really frowned upon. I think is still frowned upon sometimes from the sort of seniors in academia, but where they feel like, look, I have no choice. I can't put all my eggs into this basket and hope that I have a job at the end of it.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, I think academia is funny this way, isn't it?
yeah.
So, on the one hand, there's nothing a university likes better than hiring from outside academia, a highly visible and successful public figure, and putting them on their staff and using them to attract students. And on the other hand, those same set of habits that person has become successful through, they are not encouraging in their own
Mm,
homegrown teaching staff. So that doesn't really make sense. And I think, I'm not sure there are people who can speak to this much better than I can. But there's a serious conversation about what academia is going to support, how many jobs, in what area, what guarantees it should and shouldn't give. That seems to be constantly under review. I think more positively, the satisfaction, the prospects for young scholars, many of them are realizing that no single academic institution can ever really deliver a sort of comprehensive 360-degree personal satisfaction, and that you need to be able to be visible outside your academy. And so public facing scholarship is not actually a taboo. It's an asset if you can find a way to integrate it with your research, if you can find the time,
mm,
then surely it's value added. And that seems to me is something that a young scholar can build into their profile if they have the will to do it from the very moment that they start out. And I don't see the downside. And in fact, your business wouldn't exist, John, if there weren't recognition amongst universities and colleges that public facing scholarship is inherently valuable, that
mm,
it justifies what those academies are doing to an audience that otherwise may never know about it.
mm.
So, if you want to charge people all that money, you want to charge all those undergraduates all those dollars and have them come, you need your academics to be out in front talking in a language that is attractive, that's convincing, that wins votes, if you like, in the competition for the next generation of students. That's dealing with the public, and some of those skills translate exactly into the sort of skills that trade publishing authors can benefit from.
Yeah, absolutely. But we also have to be honest about it and say that one of the advantages, and I mean, I will be very honest about it. One of the reasons when I set up Scholars to Storytellers that I targeted senior academics in the marketing, obviously one of the reasons was that they were the natural kind of people to do trade books towards their later on in their careers, but also, frankly, they had the funds. I mean, I'm running a business, and I have yet to figure out. Um, this question kept coming up, and I was like, well, I don't know how to help a graduate student or a postdoc in a way that is affordable to them and also works for us. I am very happy to say that literally as of today, literally the day that we're recording this, we have just launched finally. I've been talking about this for months and months and months, those of you who know. But we have finally launched our first ever video course with exactly this, or not just this audience in mind, for senior scholars as well, across the board regardless of rank and age and so on, I found that, whenever I give these workshops, retreats, people come in and say, I want to do the coaching, but I can't afford several $1,000s to work with you or Clive. I mean, is there a cheaper option? Da, 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 da. And my answer was always, well, not really. Here are some ways we could, maybe tweak things, but I'm really pleased to say that as of today, we're recording on the 3rd of June, 2026. We have just launched our first ever video course and this is not just aimed at the junior scholars, this is for everyone. There are two versions of this. There is a $97 version where you can just download the videos. There are 6 videos that walk you all the way through how to do a book proposal. This is literally the same stuff we teach in our coaching. And you can self-paced, you can do it. Or there is a $697 version where after each of those modules, we will meet once a week. We'll meet with me and we'll workshop your writing. So we'll break down little pieces of the proposal, and then we'll look at them together and the writing sample. So we're calling this the 8-week trade book proposal bootcamp. So there's a self-paced version and a live cohort bootcamp version. And for the live cohort, we literally will do this over 8 weeks. And at the end of that 8 weeks, you have everything you have a solid draft of your proposal and your writing sample. You can go out to agents on your own, or we can help you with that. We'll give you all the tools to do that for a fraction of what we charge when Clive or I are working with you one-on-one. And you're still getting a lot of time. If you do the live version, you're still getting a lot of time with me, and we'll be looking closely at your work together. So this is a really good option if your budget is tight, whether because you're junior or simply because your budget is tight for other reasons. So let's get back to what we were talking about, though. I did just want to kind of mention that. If you're interested in that, just go to there'll be a link in this when I send out the email. Is it ever too early to think about this? I mean, what's too early? I mean, obviously, I don't know. It would sometimes we get smart graduate students coming and they have cool ideas. I've had grad students come with really great ideas, and they're like, I don't know is it a bad idea for me to do a trade book? I don't know. Can you help me? I mean, what's too early to start thinking about this, do you think?
I mean, I don't think there is a cutoff. There's no threshold that you have to clear in order to be able to write a good trade book. I think there are certain things that, work to your advantage in trade publishing. It is harder to bring all those things to the table if you have just graduated with your bachelor's. And that has to do with a number of things. It's partly to do with your unique expertise. You've had less time to develop it. It's partly to do with the number of people who are willing to recognize that in public. You've had less time to build your network. You have fewer peers and competitors to validate whatever it is you're doing. So it is harder just to say, I've got something brilliant and I'm going to do it now, get out of my way. But it's not impossible. And if the idea is special enough and the execution is special enough, then it will succeed. But I think if you want to really sort of stack the odds in your favor, then it's worth spending a few years doing some preparatory work.
Yeah. The other question is for young scholars, sometimes they have to do this on the side. They have to develop their monograph. If they're really committed to a serious academic career, this can be the real challenge. You're not going to get that academic tenure track job on the basis of your trade book. I mean, that's not going to happen, right? Unless maybe it's a very unusual kind of institution that really values these kinds of things, right? Or you're very good at spinning it, making sure there are lots of citations and so on. But
or you're successful,
right?
I mean, nothing succeeds like success.
Sure.
So your academic institution, whilst it will have its rules about tenure, if you sell 100,000 copies of a book and you suddenly turn up on 6 national news shows and NPR, and you've been asked to write essays for the Wall Street Journal and the Atlantic, and you're doing all these things routinely and often, suddenly your academic institution is going to think twice about exactly how many barriers it puts up to your tenure. So, I mean, I think it's a much higher risk strategy to put all your efforts into that road as opposed to the monograph road. But it can work, and it clearly has done for some people.
Yeah.
But yes, you're right. Writing, honestly, most people who make a living out of writing don't make a living out of writing.
Mm,
It's always on the side for somebody at the beginning. You're having to do something else in order to pay bills. So you having to be an academic in order to do your writing on the side. Well, it's tough, but it's not unique.
right.
Um, I don't think it should be a reason not to do it.
Yeah.
I think, and more particularly, if you really want to do it, you will.
Yeah. No, exactly. I mean, I think I was thinking, especially of the very junior, like sort of graduate students or postdocs, where, you know, if you're serious about going on the job market and doing job talks and so on, you probably want to have some academic stuff to show as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
But people do it. I have a very good friend, I'm not going to name names, but who, I remember a contemporary of mine many years ago who did a trade book as a graduate student. And she got a lot of stick for it from her colleagues when she was an assistant professor and so on. But she got the tenure track job. She did the academic monograph, and now she's an endowed chair at a very prestigious university. Um, so it works out. I mean, she's also very smart and works very hard and did great work. But that's not everybody. But it can absolutely be done. And you're right. You have to think of it as your sort of side hustle, the way anybody else does when they're writing a novel or what have
Right.
you. Okay, cool. So that's the lesson, I guess. It's never too early.
It's never
Uh,
too early. And I can't emphasize too much. You know, there's a willingness to believe that you've discovered something new when that thing is new. So you're only new for a while.
that's right. That's right. You only get one shot at being young and undiscovered.
There you
So,
go.
it's
Yeah.
too late for some of us. But if
Yeah.
you're out there and you're thinking about it, don't be afraid. And don't be afraid to get in touch. And now we actually have something to give you, which is a video course that should be affordable, at least at the $97 version, should be affordable to pretty much, I think, everyone hearing the sound of our voice, even if you're a graduate student. Yeah, so take a look. I'm really excited. I hope this expands our reach. I mean, one of the reasons we're doing this is because I felt for a long time that there are the good ideas don't just exist with endowed chairs at Harvard. There are tons of, and not regardless of age, or there are senior professors and junior professors at um, universities and colleges all over the country, all over the world, who have tremendous ideas and don't have gigantic research budgets and things like that. So we are working very hard, and I'm just really honored and excited and feel good about finally being able to offer something that should be within reach for a much, much wider audience. So anyway, thank you again for joining us.
Pleasure. Always.
All right. And thank you all.